Hey guys, Will here. So this week, Forza Horizon 5 was released. A lot of people are very excited to get their hands on it and play it. Unfortunately, the list of supported hardware outside of your typical FANATEC, Thrustmaster, Logitech, and so forth ecosystems aren't very well supported. Now, we kind of did expect this being an arcade game. No surprises there, really. But thankfully, there is a way to get most pedals and wheels actually working in Forza Horizon 5 with force feedback. And look, even though the quality of the force feedback isn't absolutely fantastic, we're not really expecting it to be, given that it is an arcade title. It is absolutely playable and absolutely a great way to at least hopefully get you up and running with your particular sim hardware. Now, I can't guarantee that this is going to work for absolutely every single person. I have tested it on a couple of different wheelbases. Did seem to work just fine on the VRS Direct Force Pro. I've got it running here on my Simucube 2 Ultimate as well, so it should work on any of the Simucube 2 bases at least. So let's jump straight in, guys, and I'll show you how to get yourselves up and running. Okay, so the way this works is using a couple of third-party pieces of software, vJoy as well as Forza EmuWheel. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump on the Forza Tools website. I'll put the link down in the description below for you guys. And we have a link here for Forza EmuWheel. If you look over here as well, you've got a download link, so you're going to go ahead and download it. Then we're going to click on the link to Setup Guide. And you'll see just on the left-hand side here, there's another link to download the vJoy device driver. Now, while you are in here, I would very highly recommend jump on the About page. There is a donation link here as well. So if this all works for you, I would highly recommend sending through a donation to the team at Forza Tools. Obviously, without their support, we wouldn't have the support for the hardware. So definitely go in and send them a generous donation. So we're going to jump back to Forza EmuWheel now. We're going to click on that setup guide page. And look, all the instructions that you need to set everything up are actually listed here. And this did work for me pretty much verbatim, but I'll run you through the process anyway, just so that I can cover a couple of little tips when it comes to configuring stuff and, you know, take you through the whole process. But if you do prefer to read than watch, then all the information that you need is here. So as I said, we're going to download the Forza EmuWheel from the link that we showed before, as well as the vJoy driver. And that is pretty much all that we need to do on the website, unless you want to read through the FAQs. So we're going to move that out of the way for now. Then we're going to go to our downloads folder, or wherever we downloaded the software to. We're going to run the vJoy setup executable. So it's just a standard installation wizard, run through that. And then we're also going to extract the Forza EmuWheel zip file into a folder too. Now put the folder somewhere where you can access it easily, because you are going to need to run these executables, or a couple of these executables, every time you open up Forza Horizon 5. So with Forza EmuWheel unzipped and vJoy installed, what I would recommend you do is reboot your PC. vJoy does install some device drivers, so you may have a couple of issues if you don't restart. It actually did work for me, but yeah, definitely do recommend doing that. Then we're going to open up our start menu. We're going to type in configure, and you should see configure vJoy pop up there. And now we're going to configure vJoy. So vJoy is essentially, without going into heavy details here, it's kind of like an emulation piece of software. So what it does is it takes all of the raw inputs from your hardware, as well as force feedback effects as well from your games, and it kind of creates this virtual hardware set that the majority of games can recognize. So that's the way it works, fundamentally at least. And if you want to understand more about it, jump on their website. There's a whole bunch of detail there to explain everything to you guys. So what we're going to do is configure everything exactly as you see it here. Now, you may have to fiddle around with the number of hat switches depending on the hardware that you have, so I can't guarantee that exactly what I have here will work for everybody, but this is what works for me on my Simucube 2 Ultimate base. So we're ticking on all our axes, all of our force feedback effects. We're selecting 128 buttons, 4 directions for our hat switch, and for me, I've got POVs set to 1, and all of that is listed on that Forza EmuWheel setup guide that I showed you before as well. So with that done, all you need to do is just close vJoy there. Then we're going to open up the folder that we extracted before for Forza EmuWheel. You'll see there's a folder here called registry. So we're going to double click on vjoy.reg. We're going to add this to the registry. I've already done that, so I don't need to do it again. And then we're going to go back. We're going to click on configurator. So double click on that guy. And this brings up the Forza EmuWheel configuration tool. Now, this is where things will vary depending on your particular hardware, but this is where we basically bind our controls as they're going to be seen by Forza, and then once we go into Forza, we'll need to rebind them there as well. So this is basically telling that Windows level interpreter what controller is going to be controlling what inside the game, if that makes sense. So pretty standard stuff here. You can see we also do have a tab for force feedback as well. You can make all your adjustments to your force feedback. And again, that will obviously depend on the hardware that you're going to be running. I might make a separate video once I've got my Simucube base dialed in perfectly, or as best as I can possibly get it, and let you guys know what my settings were there. But we'll jump back on the control tab for now. So this is pretty self-explanatory. We click on set for steering. We move our steering wheel and it should detect it. Now combined is if you have a combined throttle and brake. We're going to click on throttle now. So set, I'm going to push on my throttle pedal, brake, push on my brake pedal. There we go. Clutch. There we go. And then handbrake as well. I actually don't have a mechanical handbrake on the rig right now. I'll have to add that before we make our Forza video. But you get the idea here. Now, one thing I do want to mention here is if you are holding your wheel while you're trying to do other things, then what it'll do is it'll detect the input on the wheel and you might end up double mapping your steering, or it'll come up with a warning. So I'd recommend taking your hands off everything and your feet off everything and just pushing on the control that you're wanting to bind. That way you're not going to get any rogue inputs from your wheel or your pedals. Then we can go through and do the same thing for our buttons as well. So click on the button that you want to map and then map the corresponding button on your wheel to the same thing. Simple as that. So once we've done that, we're going to click on Save Config and you'll see a little prompt pop up that says configuration saved. What that does is it saves it as a configuration.json file here. So if you do need to go in and change something, rather than starting from scratch, all you need to do is click on Load Config, load that JSON file, and then you can go in and make any adjustments that you need to do without having to start absolutely from scratch. Now, you only need to do this configuration once. It will automatically work in the future. So once that's done, we can close off our configurator. And then we're going to open up the hush.exe. So this is one of the steps that you're going to need to do every time you run the game. So we double click on that guy. Now, what this little piece of software does is it stops Forza from detecting the hardware twice. Remember, we've created essentially a virtual version of the controls that we've mapped. So we've got a virtual set of pedals and a virtual wheelbase here, a virtual wheel as well because of the buttons. So what this is going to do is it's going to mute those physical hardware devices in the game so there's no device ID conflicts or anything like that. So we're going to click on mute. And you can see now it's muted my Invicta pedals as well as my Simucube to ultimate base. So that is as simple as that. You will just need to make sure that you do that every time you open up your game. Otherwise, you may have some issues. So we can minimize that now. It doesn't affect any other games either. It only affects Forza. So if you do jump in and play something else, forget to unmute, it will still work. Then we're going to open up the Forza EmuWheel executable. And again, you will need to do this every time you open your game. And you can see a bit of a debug list that comes up here. If you do have any problems with the configuration, it will throw an error and it won't allow you to start. One of the problems that I did run into was just not having the vJoy configuration quite right. Again, it will depend on the wheel and pedals and wheelbase that you're using. So you may have to do a little bit of trial and error there just to get it right. I found if I didn't have my hat switch set as I showed you guys, then it would get an error here and I wouldn't be able to start the app. But once you've got that nailed in, all you need to do is just click on Start. And you'll see Forza EmuWheel is running. And then we're going to go into Forza Horizon 5 and map our controls in there. Okay, so almost there, guys. We go into the options menu in Forza Horizon 5. We're going to click on Controls, change input mapping. And from here, it is literally as simple as just mapping all your controls as you normally would in any other game. So we're going to click on Wheel here. We're going to click on Accelerate, push on my throttle, brake, push on my brake, steering, you guessed it, and so forth. Just go through, map all your controls as you normally would, and you are good to go. Now, as I mentioned before, the experience will vary depending on the hardware. You will need to go in and do some tweaking and fine-tuning of your force feedback settings within the configurator app as well, as I showed you before. Again, that will depend on the wheelbase that you're doing, so I'm not going to cover that in today's video. I did find that using settings similar to what we would use in Assetto Corsa did work pretty well as a base point. So if you are using profiles in your Simucube True Drive app or something like that, then that is probably a pretty good base point to start with. Start with your Assetto Corsa profile and then tweak from there. If you did have to change anything from what you saw in this video to get vJoy working with your particular hardware, let us know down in the comments below what hardware you're running and what you needed to do to get it to work. And yeah, let's get as many people as we possibly can enjoying this very fun game. So that's it for today, guys. Leave a thumbs up if you have found the video helpful. And yeah, make sure you're subbed as well so you don't miss out on any future content. We're going to be taking this for a drive, I think, now in the crazy sim rig here. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a whole ton of fun. So I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.